William Carter had built his empire on silence. Silence in boardrooms, silence in negotiations, silence when enemies begged for mercy. But the silence inside his mansion at 3:11 in the morning felt different, heavy, dangerous. He stepped out of his private office after another sleepless night, loosening the tie around his neck as he walked through the west corridor. That was when he heard it, a sharp inhale. Then another, pain. He stopped instantly. The sound came from the laundry room near the staff quarters. William moved quietly toward the half-open door and froze when he saw her. Sarah. She was bent over the industrial sink, gripping the edge so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Sweat clung to her forehead. Her breathing was uneven, and blood dripped slowly down her ankle onto the tile floor. For one terrifying second, his brain refused to process it. Then instinct took over. He crossed the room in 3 long strides. Sarah. She jumped violently at the sound of his voice. Her eyes widened with panic. I'm fine, she whispered immediately. The words came too fast, too automatic. The exact same words his mother used to say. William's jaw tightened. You're bleeding. It's nothing. Another contraction hit her before she could finish speaking. Her entire body folded inward as a strangled gasp escaped her throat. William caught her before she could fall. The moment his hands touched her arms, she flinched, not from pain, from fear. That nearly destroyed him. His voice became dangerously soft. Who did this to you? She avoided his eyes. No one. Blood continued spreading across the floor. William looked down. Her pajama pants were soaked near the thigh. Something was wrong. Very wrong. How far apart are the contractions? I don't know. When did they start? A few hours ago? A few. He stopped himself before shouting. She had been alone, working, in pain. And nobody had helped her. His entire house suddenly felt useless. All the money, all the luxury, all the power, worthless. He carefully lifted her into his arms. Immediately, panic flooded her face. No, please, I can walk. You're not walking. I don't want to get in trouble. The sentence hit him like a knife. Trouble. She was terrified of being punished for bleeding while pregnant. William looked at her for a long moment. Then he carried her out of the laundry room like she weighed nothing. Staff members stared as he walked through the hallway. Nobody dared speak. The most feared businessman in New York was carrying a pregnant housekeeper in his arms with murder burning behind his eyes. Call Dr. Bennett, he barked at the nearest employee. Now. Within minutes, the mansion exploded into motion. Doctors, security, cars prepared outside. William ignored all of it. Sarah trembled against his chest during another contraction. You're safe, he said quietly. She looked up at him then, really looked at him. Something flickered across her face. Recognition, not complete. Not yet, but close. You, she whispered weakly. Your eyes. William felt his chest tighten. Nobody had recognized him in years. Not the real him. Not the boy from Hester Street. But Sarah was looking through all the expensive suits and sharp edges straight into the past. You used to steal oranges from Mr. Russo's market, she murmured through pain. A broken laugh escaped him before he could stop it. You remember that? You blamed me every time. You always ate them. For the first time in years, William Carter smiled without calculation behind it. Small, real. Then another contraction tore through her, and she cried out. Every trace of softness vanished from him instantly. Where's the doctor? He thundered. The medical team rushed forward. Dr. Bennett examined Sarah quickly before looking up at William with concern. She needs a hospital now. What's wrong? She's under severe stress. Blood pressure is dangerously high. The baby's heart rate is dropping during contractions. Sarah's face turned pale. The baby. William crouched beside her immediately. Look at me. Tears filled her eyes. I can't lose this baby. You won't. You can't promise that. Yes, he said coldly. I can. Because William Carter had spent 20 years becoming a man powerful enough to bend reality when he wanted something badly enough. And he was not about to let her lose this child. Not after finding her again. As the medical staff prepared the ambulance, one of William's security men approached quietly. Sir, William turned. The guard lowered his voice. We found Derek Vance. The hallway went silent. Sarah stopped breathing. Pure terror flooded her face. William saw it instantly. Not discomfort, not anxiety, terror, the kind victims carried deep in their bones. Please, she whispered, don't tell him where I am. William stared at her, then slowly turned back toward his guard. Where is he? Atlantic City. The guard hesitated. There's more. William's expression darkened. He's been looking for her? Sarah broke. A sob escaped her before she covered her mouth with shaking fingers. William felt something ancient and violent uncurl inside his chest. The same darkness he inherited from his father. The same rage he spent his life controlling. Derek Vance had hunted her, while she carried his child, while she hid alone, while she scrubbed floors at night trying to survive. William looked at his security chief. His voice became ice. If he comes within 50 feet of her, the guard nodded once. He understood. No further instructions needed. Sarah grabbed William's sleeve weakly. Please, she whispered. He gets angry. William looked down at her trembling hand clutching his suit jacket. Then he covered her hand with his own. And for the first time in years, William Carter spoke with complete honesty. So do I... Will's hands tightened on the edge of the counter. So hard the marble creaked beneath his grip. Sarah heard it. She glanced at him over her shoulder and immediately recognized the expression on his face. Danger, not loud danger. Not reckless anger, the cold kind. The kind that calculated consequences before acting. Will, he stood slowly from the stool. How many times did he hit you? The kitchen went silent except for the soft bubbling of the sauce on the stove. Sarah looked down. That doesn't matter anymore. It matters to me. He's gone. No. His voice dropped lower. He's outside my gates, smoking cigarettes and watching my house. Her head snapped toward him. You saw him? Every night. Fear moved across her face so quickly it almost didn't seem human. Like instinct, like trauma burned into muscle memory. Will noticed all of it. The way her breathing changed. The way her shoulders tightened. The way one hand immediately covered her stomach. Protecting the baby. Always protecting the baby. He won't get in, Will said firmly. You don't know Derek. No, he stepped closer. But I know men like him. Sarah turned off the stove and leaned against the counter heavily. He wasn't always terrible, she whispered. Will stayed silent. That's the worst part. Her eyes became distant. When I met him, he was charming, funny, protective. She laughed bitterly. He used to bring me flowers after work. He used to kiss my forehead and tell me I deserved better than the life I had. What changed? Me. Will's expression hardened instantly. No. Yes. Tears filled her eyes. I got tired. I got stressed. I wasn't fun anymore. I worried about bills. I worked too much. I said the wrong things at the wrong times. Sarah. He always said if I would just stop making him angry. Stop. The word cracked through the kitchen like a whip. She flinched, not because he yelled, because she realized what she had said. Will moved in front of her slowly. Then he crouched slightly so she had to look at him. What he did to you was not your fault. Her lips trembled. You don't understand how these things happen. I understand perfectly. She stared at him, and suddenly he looked tired. Not billionaire tired, soul tired. My father used to say the same things to my mother, he said quietly. That she made him angry, that she pushed too hard, that she should have stayed quiet. Sarah's breathing slowed. Will rarely talked about his childhood. She remembered that even from years ago. He broke her wrist once, Will continued. I was 12. Sarah covered her mouth. I heard her crying through the wall. The kitchen suddenly felt smaller, more intimate, like two wounded people standing in the ruins of old memories. What happened? She whispered, a long silence. Then, my father died 6 months later. Sarah stared at him. There was something in his face now she had never seen before, not rage. Certainty, a terrible certainty. And suddenly she understood why powerful men feared William Carter. Because somewhere along the way, the frightened boy from Hester Street had learned how to become colder than monsters. Will straightened again. That's why I know men like Derek. His voice became steady, because I spent my whole life making sure nobody could ever hurt me or the people I care about again. Sarah's eyes searched his face carefully. You scare me sometimes. The honesty of it hung between them. Will nodded once. I know, but not in the way Derek. Something painful flickered across his expression. With Derek, I was scared because I felt small, she whispered. With you, she struggled for the words. I feel like you'd burn down the world for me if someone touched me. Will looked at her for a long moment. I would. No hesitation, no smile, just truth. Sarah looked away first. The intensity in his eyes was He didn't. She placed his palm against the side of her stomach. For 1 second, nothing happened. Then thump, a tiny movement beneath his hand. Will froze. His breath caught. Again, thump. The baby kicked harder this time. Sarah laughed, softly through tears. She's active tonight. The doctor said it's probably a girl. Will couldn't speak. His massive hand remained spread protectively across her stomach like he was afraid to move. The baby kicked again, and something inside William Carter cracked wide open, not weakness. Something far more dangerous, love, not romantic. Not yet. Something older, deeper, the desperate need to protect. Sarah watched his face carefully. You're good with her already, she whispered. Will swallowed hard. I don't know anything about babies. You know how to make people feel safe. The words hit him harder than any threat ever had, because nobody had ever said that about him before. Not in his entire life. Another silence settled between them. Gentler this time, warm, then the security alarm shattered it. 3 sharp beeps echoed through the mansion. Will's head snapped toward the hallway instantly. His entire body changed. Predatory, alert. One of the guards' voices came through the intercom. Mr. Carter. What is it? There's a vehicle at the front gate. Will's eyes darkened. Who? A pause. Then Derek Vance says he's here for his wife. Someone kind. Someone who protected people instead of using them. Sarah's voice trembled slightly, and every time I imagined my child's future, somehow you were there. Will didn't move, didn't breathe. The fire crackled softly between them. Rain tapped against the windows, and Sarah looked at him with a vulnerability so raw it nearly undid him. I know that's unfair, she whispered. You didn't ask for any of this. You thought about me, he said quietly, all the time. The words landed harder than any bullet ever could. William Carter had spent years hearing lies wrapped in compliments. Business partners, politicians, models, socialites, everyone wanted something from him, but Sarah looked at him like she saw the boy underneath the empire, and somehow she still loved him anyway, You were the only good thing from that part of my life, she admitted. When everything got ugly, I used to think about Hester Street. A small smile touched her lips. You stealing apples, flying kites, walking me home. Will's throat tightened painfully. You remembered all of it? I remembered everything. Silence settled between them again, but it felt different. Now, not heavy, intimate, dangerously intimate, Sarah looked down at her hands. When I decided to have a baby, I kept asking myself what kind of man I hoped she would meet someday. Her eyes slowly lifted to his, and the answer was always you. Will looked away first, because nobody had ever trusted him that deeply before, not completely, not without fear. Sarah stood slowly and crossed the room toward the fireplace. Her oversized sweater slipped slightly off one shoulder. She looked soft in the firelight, warm, real. You know what scares me? She asked quietly. What? That this feels safe. Will's expression darkened slightly. Safe is good. No. She shook her head slowly. Safe means I could get attached. His pulse started hammering. Sarah wrapped her arms around herself. I spent years surviving. Well, you don't survive men like Derek by dreaming about happiness. A painful laugh escaped her. You survive by expecting disappointment. You think I'll disappoint you? I think life will. Will stood. Slowly. Deliberately. He walked toward her until only a few inches separated them. You know what I think? What? I think you've spent so long waiting for pain that you don't know what to do when someone loves you correctly. Her breath caught. The word hung between them. Love. Neither of them moved. Neither of them looked away. Sarah's eyes shimmered in the firelight. You shouldn't say things like that. Why? Because I'll believe you. Will lifted one hand carefully. Slowly. Giving her time to stop him. She didn't. His fingers brushed gently against her cheek. Warm skin. Soft tears. I mean every word. Sarah closed her eyes briefly, leaning into his touch before she could stop herself. That tiny movement nearly destroyed his self-control. For years, he had imagined finding her again, but he never imagined this. Her standing in front of him carrying a child, broken in places the world couldn't see, still trying to believe in goodness anyway. You deserve more than survival, he whispered. You deserve peace. His thumb brushed beneath her eye. You deserve to wake up without fear. A tear slipped down her cheek. And what do you deserve? The question caught him off guard. Will almost laughed. Nobody ever asked that. Not really. Men like him weren't viewed as people. They were weapons, resources, power, but Sarah was asking like the answer mattered. I don't know anymore, he admitted. She stared at him for a long moment. Then her hand slowly rose to his chest, right over his heart. You deserve to stop carrying everything alone too. The softness in her voice hurt more than cruelty ever could. Will covered her hand with his own, and for one dangerous second, he almost kissed her. His eyes dropped to her mouth. Sarah noticed that her breathing changed. The air between them became electric. Then the security alarm exploded through the house. 3 violent beeps. Will instantly stepped back, every instinct sharpening. His phone rang simultaneously. He answered immediately. What? The head of security sounded tense. Sir, we have a situation. Will's entire expression changed. Cold, controlled. Talk. One of our patrol vehicles found Derek Vance's car abandoned 2 miles from the estate. Sarah went pale. Behind him. What does that mean? Will asked. There's blood inside the vehicle. Silence. Then, and Derek Vance is missing. 6 months later, the house no longer felt empty. It felt alive. Tiny socks hung over the backs of chairs. Baby bottles crowded the kitchen counter. Soft lullabies drifted through the East Wing at all hours of the night, and William Carter, the man newspapers once called ruthless, now spent most mornings walking through the garden with a sleeping baby against his chest. Grace loved mornings. She loved the sound of birds, the rustle of trees, the deep rumble of Will's voice when he talked to her like she understood every word. You see those roses? He murmured one cool autumn morning. Your mom likes the white ones best. Grace blinked up at him seriously. But I think you'll like the red ones. He smiled softly. You've already got her attitude. From the terrace above, Sarah watched them through the window, and every single time, it felt unreal, not perfect, not magical. Real. The kind of happiness she used to think only existed in books. Will look different now, softer around the edges. He still wore tailored suits, still terrified billionaires in boardrooms, still made impossible deals before breakfast. But now there were baby toys in his office. Now there was a framed photograph of Grace on his desk. Now he came home early. For them. Sarah stepped outside quietly, wrapping a sweater tighter around herself. Will looked up immediately. The change in his face when he saw her still stunned her sometimes. Like no matter how many mornings passed, part of him still couldn't believe she was really there. You're supposed to be sleeping, he said. She already woke me up twice. Grace made a tiny offended sound in her sleep. Will looked down at her dramatically. Your mother is attacking your reputation. Sarah laughed softly as she reached them. Will handed Grace to her carefully, like he still thought the baby was made of glass. Sarah kissed Grace's forehead. Then she looked at him. You have a meeting today. I canceled it. You can't cancel $1 billion meetings every time Grace smiles at you. Watch me. She shook her head, smiling. 6 months ago, she barely remembered how to smile. Now it came naturally around him, not because he rescued her, because he stayed. That was the difference. Derek used love like a weapon, like ownership. Will treated love like responsibility. Something sacred, something earned every day. Sarah said quietly. You're ruining her. Will looked horrified. How? She already knows she can manipulate you. That's not manipulation. He looked down at Grace defensively. That's strategy. Sarah laughed again. God, she loved him. Not the billionaire. Not the powerful man everyone feared. The boy underneath all of it. The one who still remembered cheap gum and stolen apples and kites over Hester Street. The one who held Grace at 3 a.m. so Sarah could sleep. The one who checked every lock in the house twice before bed, because trauma taught him to protect first and rest later. The one who never raised his voice at her, never made her feel small, never made her earn kindness. Will reached for her hand. Simple gesture. But Sarah still noticed it every time, because Derek used to grab. Will only ever help. You okay? He asked softly. The question used to scare her. Now it healed something. Yes, she answered honestly. I think I finally am. Will studied her face carefully, like he was making sure she meant it. Then he nodded once. Good. Across the lawn, one of the security guards approached discreetly. Old instincts flashed through Sarah. Immediately. Fear, tension, waiting for bad news. Will felt her stiffen beside him and instantly squeezed her hand, grounding her. Safe. The guard stopped several feet away. Sorry to interrupt, sir. What is it? Update from the district attorney's office. Sarah's heartbeat stumbled. Will looked at the guard steadily. Go ahead. Derek Vance accepted a plea deal. No hiding, no running, no checking windows every hour. Gone. Will crouched in front of her instantly. Hey. Her eyes filled with tears. He can't come back. No. He can't find us. No. Her mouth trembled. And then for the first time since Will found her in that hallway at 2 a.m, Sarah Miller truly believed she was free. A sob broke from her chest. Will pulled her against him immediately. Well, Grace slept peacefully between them, and Sarah cried into his shoulder for everything she survived, for every bruise, every sleepless night, every moment she thought nobody was coming for her. Will held her through all of it, just like he did when they were kids. Only now he was strong enough to keep the promise he made back then. Nobody hurts you while I'm here. After a long time, Sarah finally pulled back. Her cheeks were wet, her eyes red, but she was smiling, real smiling. Will brushed a tear from her face gently. There she is, he whispered. Who? The girl from Hester Street? Sarah laughed softly through tears. She's older now. She's stronger. Now, Grace stirred sleepily between them. Will kissed the baby's tiny forehead. Then Sarah's, and in the quiet morning light, surrounded by roses and sunlight and the kind of peace they both fought to earn, William Carter realized something. For the first time in his life, he had everything he ever wanted.